Ocarina or Majora? That is the question. Since the launch of the two games for Nintendo 64 in 1998 and 2000, the Zelda fanbase has been heavily split on which of these two masterpieces is the best game. And even though both are great on their own, a lot of prime and nostalgia is tied to the two first 3D Zelda experiences. In many ways, you can say that Ocarina and Majora are solid ambassadors for what many will consider to be the golden age in the history of the Zelda series, and it shows on Metacritic, where Ocarina of Time stands with the unbeatable score of 99 and a timeless status, with Majora's Mask not far behind with a score of 95. So in order to objectively determine which of these two giants stands strongest, we decided to divide up this battle royale into 7 different categories: story/main quest, side quests, game world, dungeons, bosses, music, and gameplay. The video game war between Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask is about to break out. Before we begin, we'd like to announce that this episode is sponsored by Quid, the free app where you can collect stickers to use online for chats. You can literally just drag and drop these stickers into programs like iMessage, with themes like Rick and Morty, Fallout, and Game of Thrones. If you're not a fan of microtransactions like us, Quid practically gives you coins to exchange for stickers, cards, and even Funko Pops. Be sure to download Quid on iTunes and Google Play for free. Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask are radically different games with a completely different premise, pacing, and way of conveying story elements to the player. Ocarina of Time is a classic example of traditional storytelling in a video game, where cinematic cutscenes and moments with long lines of dialogue and solid pacing move the story forward to the next objective, character, or dungeon. You can say that there are 7 acts to Ocarina's flawless way of building up and telling, beginning from being called by the Great Deku Tree, being introduced to Saria, Hyrule, and finally Princess Zelda and Impa in the opening act, who leads you over to the second act. This one begins with Impa informing you about the objectives and leads the way to the Gorons and Zoras, where Link befriends Darunia and Princess Ruto to collect the remaining spiritual stones. The third act is the turning point of the plot, where Link, or we as the player, are set on a trial in the form of Ganondorf's coup d'etat, Zelda tossing the Ocarina of Time, Link pulling the Master Sword upon he, in a genius plot twist, is trapped in the Master Sword and wakes up 7 years older in a destroyed Hyrule ruled by Ganondorf. In the same act, we are introduced to the Light Sage Rauru, who grants the first of 6 medallions, and then sends Link to meet a new mysterious character. The first appearance of Sheik turns the page to the 4th act of the game, where Sheik informs Link about the cursed temples and hardships ahead. This act, which lasts from the moment you leave the Temple of Time and witness the ruined castle town, through the race against Dampé for the hookshot, beating the forest, fire, and water temples to awaken Saria, Darunia, and Ruto as sages. On the way, Link is taught different songs from Sheik, who, after the water temple, does everything in her might to prevent Bongo Bongo from escaping the bottom of the well. It is at this point that we transition over to the 5th act, where Link has to return to the past to claim the Lens of Truth in order to navigate through the Dark Shadow Temple, and from here, once navigate your way through the desert and again return back to the past in order to clear the child section of the Spirit Temple, and then return back to the future to complete the temple and claim the final spiritual stone. With all stones in your possession, we are faced with the second plot twist of Sheik being none other than Zelda, who, upon granting Link the light arrows, is trapped by Ganondorf in his tower. This concludes the 5th act and leads to the 6th act and the climax of the game inside Ganon's tower, and then the battle against Ganondorf, escape with Princess Zelda, and ultimately the final battle against Ganon, where Link has to fight the King of Darkness for the most part without the Master Sword. By plummeting the Blade of Evil's Bane into Ganon, the story moves over to its 7th and final act, which, from a lore perspective, is the most influential one, as here, the infamous timeline split in the Legend of Zelda series is created when Link, after the deed is done, is sent back to the past to warn the young Princess Zelda. The implications of this small, but at the same time consequential act can be felt to this day. The story of Ocarina is a timeless classic, and the textbook example as to how to write a Zelda story. So how does Majora stack up to it?
To begin with, Majora has fewer story acts than Ocarina, namely 4. We have a lengthy opening cutscene with the Skull Kid, a dramatic transition from the lost woods of Hyrule to the depths of Termina, and from the happy mask salesman to the doomed clock town. Here we spend more than 2 real-life hours, or if you're clueless, much longer, as this game throws you straight into the countdown to disaster. Upon clearing reclaiming your Ocarina, recalling a memory with Princess Zelda and setting back time to the moment of your initial arrival. We return back to the moment of arrival and the second and main act of the game, where upon learning the Song of Healing from the Happy Mask salesman, you are freed from the curse caused by Skull Kid. With the expectation of an optional cutscene regarding Skull Kid, this is pretty much all plot exposition you get apart from freeing the giants and some minor interaction with a few characters on the way to the temples. The rest of the main plot is tied to clearing the dungeons and soothing the pain of dying or cursed souls by playing the Song of Healing for them. This results in some brief but really emotional callbacks. Nonetheless, there's a reason for this story pattern. As for each 3-day cycle, the time is reset or the world goes under and then resets. With that being said, the final hours and especially the end of the world cutscene is by no doubt one of the most powerful cutscenes in the Zelda series. No game over screen got anything on this one. By clearing the temples and challenges found in the swamps, icy mountains, vast sea, and canyon, Link can finally move over to the final, 3rd climactic act and face Skull Kid. This eventually results in the mindfuck of the century and the battles against Majora's different forms. The 4th and final act is obviously the credits and post-credits cutscene illustrating the salvation of Termina.
Overall, you can say that Majora's dark and sinister tale of impending doom is conveyed as well as it possibly could have within the 3-day cycle. The scenes involving Mikau and Darmani are really touching and depressing, and even though we love the story of Majora's Mask, we cannot ignore the lack of any significant plot development, as Majora's strongest points are found in other categories. As it goes for story, Ocarina of Time introduced a brand new world with new races, much better pacing, development, major plot twists, character developments, and ending that received greater implications than anyone could possibly imagine. As a result of this, the first battle over story and the main quest goes to Ocarina of Time. Both Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask have 2 of the best, well-crafted, and most memorable multi-stage side quests that are still referenced as the way to do side quests in RPGs. But as such, which one has the best blend of activities in between quest plots and dungeons? Ocarina of Time had a number of excellent side quests, such as the Happy Mask Salesman Mask quests in the past, and the quest for Epona at Lon Lon Ranch and for the Big Goron Sword in the future. On top of that, Ocarina of Time had a number of excellent minigames ranging from the most impressive fishing simulator in 1998, horseback archery, playing songs for Toads and Skull Kids, minigame galleries, searching grottos, a number of side quests within Hyrule Castletown and Kakariko, hunt for the Golden Skulltulas, and even an entire optional area, the Gerudo Training Grounds on top of the search for Pieces of Hearts.
Majora's Mask, on the other hand, sacrificed some forced story to perfect its rewarding time-based side quests. And it shows, with the deep and heartbreaking Anju and Cafe questline, which by most fans is considered to be the best multi-stage side quest in any Zelda game, period. With many more multi-stage time-based side quests in and around Clock Town, with powerful and useful masks as rewards. Close to every side quest has a plotline tied to the characters in question, and each of these are interconnected in a nearly seamless way. On top of this, Majora has a number of great and unique minigames, like the race against the Gormon brothers, the Goron race which is an instrumental to permanently upgrade your sword, the infuriating but still entertaining beaver race, and a number of galleries found within Clock Town. Ocarina of Time's side quests are solid, but got nothing on a game that is primarily, 75%, built around time-based side quests. Even the minigames are more refined and better than Ocarina of Time, and as a result, this battle goes crushingly to Majora's Mask.
The first two 3D Zelda games are renowned for their varied provinces rich in unique enemies, races, and traditions, but which of these has the better functioning world? Ocarina of Time as the first 3D Zelda title in the series being set in Hyrule, built upon and transitioned a number of the landscapes found in A Link to the Past, ranging from forests, lakes, volcanoes, deserts, waterfalls, and expanded by including a massive seamless field and more than one village. In fact, the entire game starts in a settlement known as the Kokiri Forest, then right after brings you to the Kingdom of Hyrule with the intricate Hyrule Castle and town, and from there to Lon Lon Ranch, Kakariko Village, Goron City, and Zora's Domain. All of the provinces and towns have their own set of minigames or side activities which will prolong your stay in said location. In the instances of Castletown and Kakariko, most of these only occur during day or nighttime. This already immensely rich game world is only expanded upon pulling the Master Sword with an exception of Castletown, which is a smoked ruin. Nevertheless, apart from this exception, every region or settlement is expanded upon with a whole new province like the Gerudo Valley and Desert, with alterations and additional sections to explore in familiar provinces. On top of this, later on in the adult section of the game, new quests and opportunities open where the option to return to the past is taught to you. Good examples here are the Graveyard, Windmill, and Bottom of the Well in Kakariko Village. The future provinces are a disturbing and unsettling sight as we witness it from Link's perspective and realize how Ganondorf has kept this land under an iron fist in the last 7 years by infesting settlements with monsters and putting an egocentric douchebag in charge of Lon Lon Ranch. So can Majora's Mask's Termina hold up to the two-sided Hyrule found in Ocarina of Time?
Let us begin by stating that Majora went with different provinces than Ocarina of Time. With swamps, a sea and a coast, valley, icy mountains, and a fully explorable massive clock town. This one remains to this day the best in the series due to its NPCs. Since even though the world in Majora's Mask doesn't jump over a longer period of time, it still offers something much better to make its world believable and even more unsettling. Namely NPCs with an hour-to-hour schedule, counting slowly down to the apocalypse. This alone changes the perspective of how you perceive the world, as only Clock Town has more things to explore and discover than all settlements in Ocarina of Time combined. There are so many quest lines to follow that it will easily take days to learn the schedules and even more to complete all the tasks tied to the characters. The same, but to a smaller degree, can be said about the provinces surrounding Clock Town, where there is a similar approach to the NPCs as one found in Ocarina. But that doesn't change the dark mood tied to the impending doom surrounding these characters. Just like in Ocarina, the different provinces outside the main town have a number of minigames and races. However, unlike Ocarina, the main 4 provinces have more than one race in each of them. The Gero and Ikana warriors in Ikana Valley, the Zora and Gerudo warriors in the Great Bay, the Deku and humans in the swamps, and humans and Gorons at Snowhead. Oh, and let's not forget the inside of the moon. That place was messed up. Majora's Mask has what Ocarina of Time had in terms of its world, but presents it in a deeper way by placing all important points of interest within a compact area. Each province filled to the brim with content, living in realistic NPCs with real-life problems, and psyche that gradually descend into madness. This could have been a close call if Hyrule Castle was explorable in Ocarina of Time, but as it is, there is no doubt that this battle goes to Majora's Mask.
So dungeons are up next. Who do you think will win? But before we reveal that, we want to inform that Quid, who is making this video and our upcoming large new series possible, gives you new stickers from shows like Adventure Time, Twin Peaks, and Game of Thrones for free. It is just like amiibo content in Breath of the Wild, but unlike amiibos, you don't have to buy any figurines first. By counting the dungeons in Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time, we can see a clear disproportion. Where Ocarina of Time has 9 dungeons including the final climb to Ganondorf, Majora's Mask has only 4 main dungeons. But before we declare a winner, let us look at the specifics. Ocarina of Time's quest is divided into 3 dungeons in the child portion of the game, and 6 dungeons in the adult section. Each of these has a map, compass, mini-boss, a mid-dungeon item, and a boss. Ocarina is well known for being the Zelda game that, step by step, makes the player used to solving puzzles in a 3D environment. Good proof for this claim is that none of the child section dungeons have keys to open locked doors, and instead of taking place in temples, are located inside a giant tree, a cavern, and the belly of a giant fish. All of these have great design, but do not exactly pose a challenge for the experienced Zelda player. However, in the adult section, things get serious as you have to clear 5 temples filled with locked doors, deadly mini-boss encounters, and some of the best dungeon designs and mechanics in the Zelda series. With the exception of the Water Temple, Ocarina of Time stands with the masterpieces that are the Forest Temple, Spirit Temple, and Fire Temple, even though the final one was rather controversial in its original release. With that being said, the linear Shadow Temple is not far behind, and Ganon's Tower marks for the perfect build-up for the final confrontation. On top of this, Ocarina of Time had a number of mini-dungeons including the ever-so-eerie Bottom of the Well, the Ice Cavern, and the Gerudo Fortress. All of these are memorable for their theme, physics, emphasis on stealth, and navigation.
Majora's Mask only has 4 dungeons, and it takes some time before you get to them. Even so, when you first get there, oh boy, are they worth the wait. With the exception of the Great Bay Temple, that place sucks. For one, in addition to the map, compass, item, which unfortunately are just arrows, Majora also has stray fairies. By collecting all of these within a given temple and returning them to the Great Fairy Fountain, Link can increase his magic meter, defense, and get the Great Fairy Sword. But enough talk. How do the dungeons in Ocarina of Time stack up against Majora? In short, pretty good. Ocarina of Time may have the Twisting Forest Temple, but Majora's Mask got the Stone Tower Temple. A masterpiece of a Zelda dungeon, divided into 2 sections, and a great mid-game twist. The puzzles in this dungeon are among the best in the entire Zelda series, and the Stone Tower Temple is definitely the dungeon that tests all the skills and transformation masks in the game. The Woodfall and Snowhead temples may not hold the same quality as the Stone Tower Temple, but that doesn't mean that they are bad. Far from it, as these 2 dungeons are massive and challenging beasts with multiple layers and well-designed gameplay sections. Both take great advantage of the Deku and Goron masks and are definitely on par with the Shadow or Fire temples in Ocarina. On top of this, Majora has a number of mini-dungeons beginning from the Pirate Fortress to the ancient castle of Ikana, which even has a proper boss fight and 2 Skulltula houses. Majora also has the Beneath the Well mini-dungeon, but this one is a tedious fetch quest.
If it wasn't for Ocarina's number of dungeons in Ganon's Tower, then Majora could have had a chance, as the Stone Tower Temple is incredible, but not enough to deny Ocarina of Time the victor in this battle. Let's be honest, solving puzzles is half of the fun in a Zelda dungeon, but what can really make or break a dungeon is its final hazard, the unavoidable boss fight. Luckily, both Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask had some memorable and intense boss battles. Ocarina of Time, as the game that introduced Z-Lock targeting, turned the boss battles into one-on-one duels and took advantage of the first-person camera mode for several of the boss fights. Another thing, they created boss fights that resolved around locating specific weak points or turning the classic swordplay fights into something more refined. Common to all of Ocarina's bosses is that they share a theme tied to the dungeon you had just battled your way through. Good examples here are the fights against Phantom Ganon, Volvagia, Baronade, Twinrova, and Bongo Bongo. All of these are classics within the Zelda franchise and some of the most memorable foes in the entire series. Nonetheless, the mid-stage mini-bosses in Ocarina of Time were also among some of the best in the series. Good examples here are the encounters against Dark Link, Stalfos, Big Octo, Iron Knuckle, and the stuff of our nightmares, Death Hand. Then you have probably the most iconic and unforgettable boss fights in Zelda, the fights against Ganondorf, and then the King of Darkness himself, Ganon. Even so, there are also some low-point bosses in Ocarina, such as King Dodongo and Morpha.
Majora's Mask continued the untraditional boss fight style by making all boss fights revolve around transformation masks, in addition to traditional weaponry. You use the Deku Mask to outmaneuver a Dolwa, the Girl Mask to catch up with the brilliantly designed Goth, the Zora Mask to stun Georg, and the Giant Mask to smash Twin Mold. But do the boss fights match the high quality of the dungeons of Majora? Well, both yes and no. Let us explain. Since while the Snowhead Temple can be a frustrating affair, the chase after Goth is just damn brilliant and among the absolute best boss fights in the series. The same can be said about Adolwa, as this sword-wielding Tiki warrior is much more than you would have expected for your typical first boss. Although he can be a bit too easy. Still, there's a little problem with two of the bosses in Majora, namely Twin Mold and Georg. Twin Mold has no strategy whatsoever on the N64 and is much more enjoyable, but then again, easy on the 3DS version. And Georg? Well, Georg is Georg. An infuriating bastard of a boss that will annoy the hell out of you. The new fight against him in the 3DS version is much more enjoyable, but still a source of frustration. Even though the game only has 2 solid dungeon bosses, it in return has a great final boss. The memorable but still a little random fight against Majora's Mask, its incarnation and final wrath. The fight is definitely worth the time to grind through the dungeons, but still lacks a little to the grandeur that are the fights against Ganondorf and finally Ganon in Ocarina. Luckily, this isn't all, as Majora has many of the best mini-bosses in the Zelda series, ranging from the battles against Snapper to Wizrobe, or for example Wart, Gecko, Skullkita, King Ego's Duikana, the Garo Master, and finally Gomez. All of these were not found in Ocarina of Time, and were a major step up from the mini-bosses in said game.
In other words, we are faced with a paradox as Ocarina has the better bosses, while Majora has the better dungeon mini-bosses. This battle is so close, but in the end there is a decisive element, and that is the final boss fights, where the final confrontation in Ocarina of Time narrowly knocks out the 3-stage confrontation against Majora. And as such, Ocarina of Time takes this battle with the smallest margin possible. For some games, a solid soundtrack can set the mood or ruin it completely. The first is definitely the case for our 2 contenders, as both were composed by the Nintendo virtuoso Koji Kondo. While Ocarina of Time borrowed or remixed a number of tracks from A Link to the Past, like Kakariko Village or Ganon's theme, it still boasts some of the greatest Zelda tracks of all time. Examples? No problem. Epona's song, Zelda's Lullaby, Kotake and Koame theme, Saria's song, the Song of Storms, and none other than Gerudo Valley were all composed specifically for Ocarina of Time. The same goes for the boss and dungeon themes of the Forest Temple, Spirit Temple, or dare I say, the Fire Temple, which sparked the greatest musical Zelda controversy to date and resulted in the removal of the Islamic chant, leaving the instrumental version alone in later releases for the Nintendo 64, GameCube, Virtual Console, and 3DS.
All in all, Ocarina of Time would perform well in this category if it wasn't up against Majora's Mask. Don't get us wrong, Ocarina of Time has a great soundtrack, but Majora's Mask has an even better one. In Majora's Mask, Koji Kondo simply topped his previous achievements. Don't trust us? You don't have to, as the excellent tracks of Clock Town, the Mayor's Office, the Milk Bar, Stone Tower Temple, the Boss Theme, Ikana Castle, Daku Palace, the Brahmin Song, the Giant's Theme, the Skull Kid Battle Theme, the Final Hours, and dare I say the Song of Healing, were all handcrafted for Majora's Mask. There's a reason why a large portion of the Zelda fanbase considers Majora's soundtrack to be the best in the series. Ocarina's soundtrack is really good, but cannot match the magnum opus of Koju Kondo.
Before we go over to the final battle, we want one last time to inform you that thanks to Quid, we will be able to bring the voice overlord Jason Dameron to fully narrate our new upcoming series, and what is better, give you some free digital merch from Game of Thrones, Rick and Morty, and Funko Pop heads for use in iMessage, or if you prefer, trade them with other users. For instance, here we got some great character profiles from our favorite show, Game of Thrones. No surprise, as we are Zelda and medieval settings fanatics. Make sure to check out our user Commonwealth to start trading. Link to the app is in the description below. And now, let us have a look at the scoreboard. Ocarina of Time, having won the categories of story, dungeons, and bosses, stands with 3-1 battles, while Majora's Mask has not been worse, standing its ground strong against its predecessor by pulling out victories in side quests, game world, and music. So technically, we have a draw, even though the categories won by Ocarina seem to be of higher importance. But let's not forget that we have one decisive confrontation left. Surprise! Instead of being our second category, gameplay is last, and there is a good reason for this, as this is a category we fought long and hard over which game pulls out better, and let's state this right now, this is a really close one. Since we have a statement prior to this final battle, we decided this time to let Majora show off first. As we all know, Majora's Mask emphasizes heavily on the clever use of transformation masks to take the form of a Deku, Goron, or a Zora, and non-transformation masks in its gameplay and the 3-day cycle which goes over and over. This one can luckily be, to some degree, manipulated through the use of the Ocarina to slow down, skip forward, and reset time to the moment you arrive in Termina. Doing so doesn't only reset all your non-deposited savings, but also unused arrows, nuts, bombs, and fairies and potions found in bottles. This changes the gameplay drastically from other Zelda games, where you keep all your belongings for as long as you are able to not deplete them on your own. Because of this, the pacing and emphasis on character quest lines through the excellent Bomber's Notebook, Majora isn't as streamlined as Ocarina of Time. On several instances, you have to reclaim items or wait for specific events. This in turn can also make the gameplay in Majora's Mask much more cryptic and annoying than Ocarina of Time, as you can't progress further onto specific provinces or dungeons upon completing difficult and to some point unclear objectives. With that being said, the items found in Majora are more powerful than in Ocarina. Good examples here are having a much more versatile hookshot, much greater implementation of fire and ice arrows, and the Lens of Truth actually having some function outside of dungeons or mini-dungeons. And one other thing worth mentioning is that the warping system in Majora's Mask through Ocarina of Time is much more refined than the system found in Ocarina, which for the most part revolves around getting to temples and no other place. Ocarina of Time, on its side, has both the child and adult gameplay where the two are radically different but at the same time intertwined. Some items and weapons are only available in one of the time periods, while other items such as planting beans in the child section result in changes in the adult section. In other words, some actions taken in the child portions have an impact on the gameplay in the adult era. Furthermore, the Ocarina of Time and their Song of Time is central to solving puzzles inside temples, and some sections require gauntlets to access. Ocarina also took advantage of the elements of fire and water in its different tunics. It also has a much more rewarding fishing minigame in both the Nintendo 64 and 3DS versions, and switchable shields than the one that is replaced in Majora's Mask. Ocarina also had items that were not found in Majora's Mask, such as the Megaton Hammer and the hover boots used to pass shorter gaps. Both games have horseback gameplay through Epona, even though this one is only limited to getting across Hyrule Field to Lake Hylia and Gerudo Fortress faster. In other words, the Epona gameplay is better in Majora's Mask as she can reach all provinces except for Snow Peak and is needed to get over to the Great Bay the first time around. The cryptic nature of Termina may not be as enjoyable as the streamlined adventure in Hyrule. Even so, when it comes down to it, we can simply say that Majora's greatest gameplay strengths are its masks, while Ocarina has items. Both are great in their own way, but the limiting nature of some items outside dungeons in Ocarina is a problem. Majora, on the other side, embraces its masks in a much better way throughout the world of Termina. Good examples here are the Bunny Hood, Bomb Mask, the Stone Mask, and the Gibdo Mask. But even these got nothing on the Deku, Goron, and Zora transformation masks that change everything. Since the Deku Mask makes it possible for you to fly over short distances, the Goron Mask lets you roll around at the speed of sound, and the Zora Mask makes it finally possible to swim properly and fast underwater in a much greater sea than the lakes found in Ocarina. Overall, this battle is really close. But in the end, the mentioned mask plus the Great Fierce Deity completion bonus secures the victory for Majora's Mask. So after 7 long stretched battles, Ocarina of Time sits back with the victories in the story, dungeons, and bosses categories, while Majora's Mask takes the cake in terms of side quest, game world, music, and gameplay. This means that Majora's Mask is the overall winner in this battle as it elevates and builds upon many of the formulas found in Ocarina. However, bear in mind that these two masterpieces are radically different from each other, and if we valued the two games as traditional streamlined Zelda adventures instead of just 2 games, it is likely that Ocarina of Time would have won this war, with victories in the 3 key elements to 3D Zeldas: main quest, dungeons, and bosses. But as a video game, Majora's Mask is slightly better than Ocarina and as such qualifies to challenge Breath of the Wild for a future episode of Game vs. Game. So make sure to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already to send us a message that you want us to make this episode for you before the end of this year. As for now, we will give you the following choice for the next episode of Game vs. Game. Do you want us to do Super Mario World vs. Super Mario Bros. 3, or The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker vs. Twilight Princess? Vote by commenting below. A great thanks goes to our good friend Dr. Wily, who joined us for this episode and balanced out our Ocarina of Time bias to set up a much more just battle. Go and check out his channel for more Zelda and Breath of the Wild theories. A big thanks goes to all our patrons, and in particular our Patreon royal producers, Transcendent Sacred Courage and Kenyatta Ali, for making big and risky productions such as this one possible. If you want to support our channel to create greater and better videos and series, consider supporting us on patreon.com/commonrealm. Finally, a great thanks goes to Quid for sponsoring this video and making it possible for us to create this and future massive video projects. Download Quid today to replace your overused emojis with something much more valuable from some of the best shows out there like Game of Thrones, Rick and Morty, Adventure Time, Steven Universe, and games like Fallout in your communication with friends and close ones. Make sure to check out our user Commonwealth to start trading. Link to the app is in the description below.